Hey everyone, I'm Michael. Welcome to Invest a Voice. Let's kick things off with a story. Picture a shy, adopted kid, abandoned by his mom, a high school dropout, bouncing from job to job. No money, no stability. By all the usual standards, he didn't stand a chance. But somehow, against every odd, he turned $40 and a dream into one of the biggest burger empires on the planet. Back in 1969, Dave Thomas opened the first Wendy's. The critics, they didn't hold back. People told him America was already stuffed with fast food. McDonald's was everywhere. Burger King had the market. There was no space left. Burger King even paid for a fancy study that basically said Wendy's higher burger prices would wipe them out in no time. The experts had spoken. The numbers seemed clear. The ending looked obvious. But here we are, over 50 years later. Wendy's has more than 7,000 locations in 30 countries and pulls in over $14 billion a year. The critics? Flat out wrong. The data? Didn't mean a thing. One determined guy proved them all wrong. So like I said, I'm Michael. And here on Investor Voice, we don't just talk about money. We dig into the mindset, the grit, and the principles that help people build real, lasting success. Tonight I want to walk you through the wild story of Dave Thomas. He turned rejection into resilience, failure into fuel, and a simple childhood wish into a global powerhouse. And as we go, I'll pull out lessons you can use, whether you're building a business, investing, or just trying to do something meaningful with your life. Dave Thomas was born July 2, 1932, in Atlantic City, New Jersey, right in the middle of the Great Depression. His mom was young, unmarried, and just not ready for a child. 6 weeks after he was born, she made the heart-wrenching choice to give him up for adoption and never looked back. Imagine that, 6 weeks old. No parents, no family, just a baby in the system, waiting to see what happens next. 6 months later, Rex and Alva Thomas adopted him. They kept the adoption a secret for years. Sure, they gave him a home and a name, but stability, that was always out of reach. The kind of security most of us grow up with. He never really had that. When Dave was 5, tragedy hit again. Alva died of rheumatic fever, and Dave was left with his adoptive dad, Rex, a man who worked hard but didn't really know how to be a present, caring father. Rex bounced from job to job as the depression dragged on, moving Dave from state to state. They scraped by in dingy boarding houses and cramped trailers. Home was just wherever they happened to sleep that night. The next move, the next school, always being the new kid. Stability was a fantasy. Just think about what that does to a kid. Never settled, never safe, never sure if the people around you will stick around. Dave figured out early that the world could change in a heartbeat. People would leave, and nothing lasted. Most kids would break under that kind of pressure. They'd get bitter, angry, just give up. But Dave, that tough childhood sparked something different in him. A deep craving for stability, for warmth, for those ordinary family moments he saw in diners and restaurants. After Alva died, Rex remarried. And Dave's new stepmother? She was mean and overbearing, picked fights, tore him down, made him feel like an outsider in his own home. Worse, Rex usually took her side. Dave ended up feeling isolated and alone, growing quieter and more withdrawn. Home for him wasn't a safe haven. It was just something to get through until he could finally make his own escape. A few years later, Dave's dad got divorced. And just like that, they had to pack up and move again. Their new place was even worse than before, tiny, cramped, and didn't even have a kitchen. So most nights, Dave and his dad ate in diners or little restaurants around town. And this is where things took an unexpected turn. Those meals out became Dave's favorite part of the day. Not because of the food, but because for once he had his dad's full attention. They'd sit across from each other, talk, laugh, just be together. Sharing a meal, something simple, but it meant everything. Sitting in those diners, Dave watched other families too. Parents wiping ketchup off their kids' faces, people telling stories, everyone just enjoying being together. That's when it hit him. Restaurants weren't just about food. They were warm. They were safe. Families made memories there. And for a kid like Dave, who barely had that at home, these places felt almost magical. He wanted in. Right then, at 8 years old, he promised himself someday he'd open his own restaurant, one that felt like home for anyone who needed it. Home never really felt safe, so by 10, Dave wanted out. He needed his own money, his own place to belong. He lied about his age and tried to get hired at every restaurant in town. But nobody wanted a 10-year-old, no matter how hard he begged. So he bounced around, picking up odd jobs, gas station, grocery store, bowling alley, delivering newspapers. He didn't love any of it. He just needed something to do, some way to scrape together a few bucks. When Walgreens found out he was only 12, they fired him, just like that. Doors kept closing, but Dave never stopped knocking. Then, finally, he got his shot. Regus Restaurant in Knoxville, Tennessee. For the first time, Dave was in a real kitchen, the place he'd always dreamed about. He watched everyone, cooks, servers, managers. He learned how the kitchen buzzed at lunch, how to treat customers right, how good it felt to see someone enjoy a meal you made. Suddenly, he belonged. He'd found his place in the world. Of course, right when he started to feel settled, life yanked it all away. The Thomases moved again, this time to Fort Wayne, Indiana. New city, new school, new everything. Pretty crushing, honestly. Most people would have just given up, but not Dave. By 14, all those odd jobs and hard knocks had given him a work ethic you just can't teach. He knew how to hustle, how to keep going no matter what. So when the Hobby Ranch House restaurant opened its doors, Dave was ready, and they hired him. That's where he met Phil Klaus. Phil was nothing like any boss Dave had ever seen. Even in a suit, Phil would sweep the floors or scrub dishes. He worked hard and never acted like he was above anyone. He was kind, humble, and treated everyone with respect. Dave looked up to him right away. Phil inspired him to work even harder to prove he belonged. By the end of the school year, Dave was offered more hours, a raise, and finally, a real spot in the kitchen. No more washing dishes. He was a cook. For the first time, Dave felt proud of what he'd done. He'd earned it. Someone had noticed. He could see a future for himself. Then, out of nowhere, Dave's dad dropped the news. They were moving again. New town, new start. But Dave wasn't having it this time. The hobby house wasn't just a job anymore. It felt like family. The people in the kitchen, the regulars, even the clatter and heat, it all felt like home now. So when his dad left, 15-year-old Dave stayed put, alone in Fort Wayne. No family, no friends, just a kid juggling 50 hours a week at the hobby house and racing through his homework at night. Somehow, he managed. He survived. By the end of 10th grade, though, school just didn't make sense anymore. The lessons felt pointless, totally disconnected from the messy, busy life he was living. Everything he actually cared about, everything that really mattered, was happening back in that kitchen, not behind a desk. So Dave made up his mind, even though almost everyone would have called it reckless. He dropped out. Instead of chasing diplomas, he decided to learn by doing. Then, in 1950, the Korean War kicked off. The draft was coming, no doubt about it, so Dave decided he'd sign up first. He wasn't about to wait around. And, true to form, he didn't take the easy route. He wanted to see how the Army fed its people, so he volunteered for the mess hall. Even in uniform, food was still his world. He wanted to learn how to run a kitchen on a massive scale. Turns out, his bosses noticed how well he handled it. At just 18, Dave made staff sergeant. 18. Suddenly, he was in charge of feeding thousands of soldiers. They stationed him in Frankfurt, Germany. The work was tough. Day after day, cooking for huge crowds, barely any breaks. But he picked up skills you just can't learn any other way. He learned how to feed crowds, keep supplies in check, and deliver quality even when everything was chaos. That kind of experience stuck with him. When he got out in 1953 and came back to the hobby ranch house, he wasn't just some kid on the line anymore. He was a leader, someone who knew how to solve problems and get things done. He'd seen a bigger world. He ran bigger kitchens. And he came home with a confidence he didn't have before. He kept working his way up, became a manager, and ended up marrying Lorraine Buskirk, a waitress at the restaurant. For the first time, Dave had some real stability. He had his own family. By 1956, Dave and Lorraine already had 2 kids, Pam and Kenny. But with a growing family, that $75 a week just wasn't going to cut it. They needed more. They tried new things at the hobby house, added barbecue to the menu, hoping to pull in more customers. Nothing really clicked. Then came a turning point. One night, Phil, the owner, introduced Dave to a man who changed his life, Colonel Harlan Sanders. Back in 1955, Sanders wasn't the KFC legend yet. He was 65, driving around in a beat-up car, pitching his fried chicken recipe to any restaurant that would listen. He got a nickel for every chicken they sold. And his chicken? That secret recipe, the pressure-fried method with 11 herbs and spices, it was something else. People loved it. They kept coming back. But Sanders was picky about who sold his chicken. One bad meal could ruin everything he'd built. He needed partners who cared as much as he did. The hobby house had a reputation for good food, so he reached out to Phil. Desperate to boost business, Phil agreed. For 3 months, Dave learned straight from the Colonel. Not just the recipe, but the mindset. Do it right, or don't do it at all. When they finally rolled out KFC at the hobby house, it was wild. People lined up out the door, sometimes for hours, just for that chicken. The place was packed, so packed they could barely keep up. Dave spotted something the others missed. More and more people wanted to grab their food and go, not sit around in the restaurant. So he went for it. He carved out a little area just for takeout chicken, separate from the main dining room. With Phil's help, he basically invented one of the first dedicated carry-out sections in the restaurant world. It was so obvious, nobody else saw it coming, but it changed everything. Within a few months, that little carry-out counter was raking in $3 to $4 grand every Sunday. By 1959, KFC was taking off, and Phil Klass opened 4 more hobby house locations in Columbus, all serving KFC. But things went south fast. The new spots were a mess, losing money, and Colonel Sanders wanted to pull the plug. Phil was in deep, $250,000 in debt, which was a fortune back then. So he went to Dave and made a wild offer. If you can save these 4 failing restaurants, I'll give you 45% ownership for just $65. Here's the thing. Dave had 4 kids, a good job in Fort Wayne, stability, the whole deal. Leaving that behind to rescue some dying diners in a city where he knew absolutely no one sounded nuts. Everyone warned him it was a disaster waiting to happen. Even Colonel Sanders told Dave he was crazy for getting involved. But Dave trusted his instincts. He saw a real shot at owning something, building something from the ground up. So, in January 1962, with only $40 in his pocket, he left his family for a while and headed to Columbus. Everyone thought he'd lost his mind. Nobody knew he'd just made one of the smartest deals in restaurant history. As soon as Dave landed in Columbus, he didn't waste a second. He cleaned house, firing underperforming managers. He rebranded everything. Colonel Sanders Kentucky Fried Chicken, big and bold. He cut the menu down to what actually sold. He tightened up the frying process so every chicken was just right. No money for ads? No problem. Dave started trading chicken for radio airtime, bartering his way into people's ears and stomachs. He dreamed up the famous KFC revolving bucket sign, a spinning bucket that made drivers stop and stare. Whatever it took, he did it, and it worked. In just 6 months, sales went through the roof. The restaurants that were nearly dead were suddenly packed. Fast forward to 1968. KFC was crushing it, and the company wanted their franchises back. Dave sold his shares and walked away with over $1.5 million. Not bad for a guy who'd shown up with $40. By 35, Dave Thomas was a millionaire. Most folks would have called it a day, but for Dave, this was just the beginning. He'd never let go of that old dream, opening his own restaurant, the one he imagined as a kid, sitting in a diner with his dad. After cashing out of KFC, Dave hit a wall. He got bored, really bored. Worried he'd end up struggling again, he took a job managing Arthur Treacher's Fish and Chips. But it didn't light his fire. The only thing that got him excited was talking with his friend Len Imke, who owned a Buick dealership. Every time they talked, Dave would go on about his dream of opening a burger joint. Turns out, Len had an empty building, used to be a steakhouse, now just sitting there. He offered it to Dave for $250 a month. Dave didn't hesitate. On the drive home, Dave mulled over possible names. He wanted something personal. His daughter Melinda Lou's nickname was Wendy, so he tweaked it to Wendy. Wendy's old-fashioned hamburgers was born. Dave remembered what Colonel Sanders taught him. Presentation mattered. McDonald's had all those shiny modern stores. Dave wanted Wendy's to feel cozy, like an old-school diner. He put in carpet, Tiffany lamps, bent wood chairs, vintage posters. And the food? Fresh, never frozen, made to order. The square patties stuck out over the buns, proof they weren't skimping. The menu? Simple. People said he was nuts. Too much competition. Prices too high. Dave didn't care. He stuck to his gut. On November 15th, 1969, he opened the first Wendy's. People lined up out the door. Even the mayor stopped by. 6 weeks later, the place was already turning a profit. He opened a second spot, then tried out something new, a drive-through. Sales doubled, just like that. Wendy's was suddenly at the front of the pack, one of the first chains to really make drive-thrus work. In 1973, he started franchising, not just one store at a time, but whole cities. By 1978, there were 1,000 Wendy's. The chain blew past everyone else, hitting $1 billion in sales in less than 10 years. Then came the "Where's the Beef?" campaign, and the whole country was talking about Wendy's. Revenue shot up 30%. Suddenly, Wendy's was the third biggest burger chain out there. Dave stepped back in 1982, but by 1985, almost a fifth of the stores were about to go under. The new leaders lost their way. Dave came back, brought his old friend Jim Neer in as president, and together they got back to basics. Jim launched the value menu in 1989, and sales climbed another 25%. But the smartest move? Putting Dave on TV. People loved his straight shooter vibe. He ended up in more than 800 ads. Just a few years later, Wendy's went from losing $5 million to making $78 million by 1993. Dave cared about more than just burgers. In 1992, he started the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption, helping thousands of foster kids find families. He passed away on January 8, 2002. Today, Wendy's has over 7,000 locations in 30 countries, with more than $14 billion in sales. All this started with a shy, adopted kid who just wanted to open a restaurant. So what can we actually take from this? First, your past doesn't lock in your future. Second, stay curious. Put in the work and good things follow. Third, spot chances where everyone else sees problems. Fourth, quality and integrity always count. Fifth, know when to step back and when you need to step up. Sixth, give something back. And finally, never quit dreaming. Thanks for hanging out with us on Investor Voice. If this story hit home, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Hit subscribe, join the Investor Voice family, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next one. I'm Michael. This is Investor Voice, and I'll see you next time. Take care and remember, where you start doesn't decide where you end up. You can build something incredible. Good night.